Hi, my name is Koku with blackfilm.com. I'm here with Kenny Gravillis, the go-to designer to many major Hollywood studios. He's accomplished so much in his short lifetime. And I'm just, I'm just happy to speak to you. What an interesting person to interview, you know?
Thank you. It's not that short
so it all starts in East London.
It does, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it starts in East London. And actually, it starts in East London, I would say, around 1985. I was, so anyway, in London in the 80s. So my parents are from the West Indies.
Okay.
So I'm part of that whole immigrant story of basically in the 50s and 60s, there were like people from the West Indies would come over to either England or some went to America, but a lot came to England and ended up sort of, going there for a better world, better life, that kind of. And they end up having a bunch of kids that were basically born in England, but, had West Indian heritage in terms of their parents.
Sure.
So I sort of had that whole thing where I had sort of West Indian heritage at home, but then in the world, I was like this English kid, right?
Right.
So anyway, so I went to school in England and everything, and I would say, so for whatever reason, I actually still don't know this to this day, but when you were in high school in England, for whatever reason, at the end of high school, you could be guaranteed a job in a bank.
That's like the usual trajectory.
I don't know. I swear to you,
That's so interesting.
I don't even know why. But it felt like anyone and their mom could get a bank job. Like you could get a, like entry-level bank job. So I was not interested in that. I was just like, oh my God, I can't imagine wanting to work at a bank. And nothing wrong working at a bank, but for me, it was just seemed like, oh. But anyway, so I had a cousin of mine who was a graphic designer, who was a designer, and one that went to work with him. And it's sort of like, it was the thing that sort of sparked me, because when I went in there was no computers at the time, so it was all just like drawing board.
Yeah.
It was just like it's just a world, It just felt like this different world. So I remember going back to I went to my art teacher and said, "Hey, how do I be a designer?" And she was like, "Well, you need to go to art school." And I was like, "Okay, how do I get into art school?" So that was sort of the journey. So I ended up.
But how do you? I mean, I'm curious about your parents because I'm African, I'm East African, and so there's a similar immigrant story there.
Immigrant story,
yeah. So a lot of our parents, when we're Caribbean or African, they want you to get the bank job. So how hard of a sell was it to say, like, I really want to go to art school?
You know what? I think my parents divorced when I was pretty young. I think my mom was just happy that I was still wanting to continue some kind of education.
Okay.
I don't think she was really she wasn't really up on the art thing or anything else. It was kind of the fact that I wanted to continue education. So I think she was okay with it. So she didn't give me too much hard time over that, actually, to be honest. And I know that is a thing. It's like, especially when we're kids, like art is definitely something, I'll talk about this later, but it's definitely something that is not looked at as a potential career path. So I was lucky in that way. But anyway, so I ended up going to art school, and I'm not super academic, so I didn't love school. I was there for like a couple of years, and I could have stayed for another 2 for 4-year education. And I was like, no, I'm ready to bounce. And
you just kind of had it like you just
on the work. So my dad at the time lived in New York City, and I said, what I planned to do is after I finished college, I was just going to go to New York for 3 months over the summer. And then just spend 3 months in New York and then go back to England, basically start my career.
Okay.
That's sort of the plan. But I did take my portfolio with me when I went to New York, because I was like, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try to like have some interviews. This way I can get to know Manhattan while I'm there for the summer. It'll be fun, right? So that was the plan. Now, at the time, my accent was really strong. Like it was like really, really strong. So I would call up places and it would be like, hello, yeah, I'm here in London and I was just wondering if I could, So a lot of times, to be honest, I would get opportunities to go in for these interviews. What was really funny was that I'd get there, again, no computers, so just a big portfolio. So I arrive and I'm sitting there waiting for the person to come out. I kid you not, so many times Person comes out, looks at the receptionist, looks around, looks at me, just kind of keeps looking.
They weren't expecting
And,
the English black guy.
yeah, so
Yeah.
and so many times the receptionist going like this, like
That's
like the
funny.
look over,
Yeah.
and then I'll be like, hello,
Yeah.
and it'd just be like their faces, at the time there's no Idris Elba, I have to remember that, right? So there's no English black people are not
Yeah.
as in 1987 in New York, it's not
Yeah.
really like a thing.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a little bit of an anomaly. So they'd be like, hey, so speak, like so yes, that's sort of how it started. And I ended up basically getting a job. That ended up what's happening. I ended up getting a job in New
Yeah.
York, and that's what allowed me. That's what I ended up staying. Just because I got this job. But it was tumultuous actually. My first 2 years in New York, like I was very New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, New York does.
Yeah.
New York,
It's not an easy city, I'll tell you that much.
yeah, New York, like yeah.
I mean, especially when you're creative,
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
it
yeah.
was like my first 2 years. So I ended up getting, I think I got fired like 4 times in my first 2 years in New York.
Wow.
It was really funny too. So I had a really good friend of mine who's English as well. And don't forget, it's all before cell phones, all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
My last job I got fired on, I'm laughing about it now, of
Like
course.
the last job I got fired, like you're just getting fired all the time.
Yeah, I know. The last one I got fired on, I'd gotten the job from a headhunter. And
Okay.
and literally, I overheard this man saying, I'm gonna turn off my ear. Sorry, I'm gonna turn off my email here. It's all popping up. But I literally heard this man say, well, we don't want him anymore. And I was like, I remember calling up my friend and I was like, hey, I heard the boss saying we don't want him anymore. Do you think he's talking about me? My friend,
Oh, yeah,
my friend was like, he's absolutely talking about you.
yeah.
Like British people are really direct and really honest with you.
Yeah.
So I was just like, and then the next day I was fine. I was just like,
Again.
you know what it was though, to be honest, in all fairness.
Mhm,
So at the time I was working on stuff like Mott's apple juice
mhm.
and like Carefree panty shields and all this stuff that you find in Dwayne Reed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just wasn't, it wasn't, I wasn't connecting. I wasn't
Right. Yeah.
connecting.
Well, that's in a
Yeah.
strange way. That kind of, in a way, like mimics the experience of working at the bank. You're not. You're
Yeah,
being.
in a way. Yeah,
Yeah. You're doing
exactly.
what you want to do, but you're not doing it how you want to do it.
Yeah,
Mm,
exactly.
mm.
So I remember my dad saying to me, he's like, are you sure about this whole design thing? Are you sure this after the 4 5? And I guess that's fair as a parent, like when
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
4 times down, you kind of like, are you sure this is what you want to do?
It's a fair question.
Yeah, fair
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And in the end, so what ended up happening after that, so me and a friend of mine, so I lived in the Bronx at the time, and me and a friend of mine, we were both unemployed, my English friend, and we ended up, for some reason, it sounds really crazy, we ended up shooting a lot of pool at the local pool hall.
Right. Right.
So like we must have gone in there every day for like 4 months. And then
That's so random.
the
Yeah.
hustlers that were in there started asking us if we wanted to be like part of the crew. And
Okay.
that's when we were like, oh man, we need like to get jobs.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. 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 Mhm.
so I don't know, I kind of had one of those, I guess, just come to Jesus moments of like, okay, what do you want to do? Like, what do like, what is it? Like, what is the deal? So I thought about what I loved, right? Like, what am I actually into? It was just two things. It was music, and it was movies. Those were the two things. But I didn't really know what to do about that. But it's just like, those are the two things I was into. So I
Mhm,
remember looking at a CD,
mhm.
and I remember, I'll never forget, it was Luther Vandross, Give Me the Reason album. And I looked at the back of it and I saw it had Columbia Records.
Mhm.
It had 51 West 52nd Street. If I remember that'd be amazing if that's the right address, but I think I remember that. And so I was like, I'm gonna call them up, I'm just gonna call up the record company. So lo and behold, could be the English accent again, don't know what happened. I get this interview with
Mm.
this guy who's running the design department at Columbia Records. So anyway, I go to this interview, and this guy is like, if you could imagine, all in black, just like black turtleneck, black, no shoes, black sock, very just artsy.
Yeah, like that's what I'm getting.
You can imagine, right? Just like sprockets from back in the day. Saturday Night Live. Just anyway, so I went to him, and I have my portfolio. And my portfolio is, you know, Miss Apple Juice, Apple, Mr. Mrs. Applesauce, and Carefree Panty Shields work, and that's what my portfolio, because that's what I've been doing for the last. So I'm showing him the portfolio, and he's looking at it, and then, excuse my dog, and then all of a sudden, some artwork comes in, and this is, again, no computer, so real art is coming in to his art. He starts looking at this artwork, and then he looks back at my work, and he's flipping the pages, and then he's looking at his artwork, and he's still flipping the pages, but he's not looking at my work. And I'm just like, oh no, this is just so bad. And all of a sudden, he just stops in the middle. He looks at me, and he says, you know, we design album covers here, right? Yeah,
like this doesn't even reflect what we do here.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, I know that, but that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And he says, yeah, but there's nothing in here that tells me you know how to design an album cover, or you even have an idea of designing an album cover. So I was like, yeah, but it's kind of why I'm here. But then he said, I'll tell you what, here's what I'm going to do. Go off for 2 weeks, go design some album covers, and come back to me.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that was good, right? And I was like, oh, okay. And honestly, this next 2 weeks was life-changing.
Wow.
Because I ended up, you know, I'm English, so I was going to all my English bands, like Depeche Mode and Funny and Cannibals, right? And like Elton John. So I'm having the best time, right?
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. And it was like the first time I was doing something, and it wasn't even real. It was like I was just doing this thing, and I was making this little portfolio of these covers. Anyway, when I'm done, I was just like, okay, I'm gonna call him, gonna go see him. Can I get this guy again?
Yeah.
Nope. Can't get him again. Like, you know, he's off, he's in China, he's here. Can't get him anywhere. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. So anyway, I remember looking at this CD, the back of the CD, and I can't remember what it was now. And it had Def Jam Records, and it had distributed by Columbia Records. So I was like, oh, that's a connection to Columbia, that guy. I was like, I'm going to call these guys. So I called Def Jam. This is 1989, April. I called Def Jam, and again, maybe the accent helps. I get a chance to go in. Now, when I get to Def Jam, it's a different place completely from Columbia. Like this is on Broadway. It's smaller. Like I'm like, because I thought, oh, maybe it's the same place, but you know, I was just this is a whole different thing. I have no clue what Def Jam is. It's just like, you know, I get there, I see this black guy with dreads, right? And he says, "I'll just leave the portfolio." And I'm like, no. You said that you was gonna see me, you know? He's like, all right, come back. So I go back there. Now I have my original portfolio, the one that has What's Applesauce and Carefree in it, because that's what I've done. But I did bring my other little
those mock-ups.
First of all, I show him the quote-unquote professional stuff. Show him the What's Apple Juice and stuff like that. And then, you know, he's going through it, zipping through, and all of a sudden he's like, all right, well, thanks so much, you know, thanks for coming. I said, oh, wait. I said, I have one other thing. And then I bring out the mocks. And he looks at the mocks, and that's what gets me the job at Def Jam.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, that's awesome.
Now, the beautiful part of this story is that I'm there about a month to 2 months. Remember I told you how they were distributed by Columbia? So then they say, Kenny, we want you to take these boards, they were called mechanicals at the time, we want you to take them over and drop them over production at Columbia Records. So I go with these boards to Columbia Records, and whose office do I see? This guy.
The same that you were.
Now, I'm supposed to go drop off these boards of production, but I cannot help myself. I see
you got to be a go-getter.
I gotta go. So I see his office door open, and I just like pop my head around the corner. And he sees me, and amazingly enough, he's like, Gravillis. And I was like, yeah, like for some reason, remember my last name. And I was like, hey man, I was like, I know I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just want you to let you know, you got me a job at Def Jam. And he's like, I did. I was like, yeah. I was like, I did these covers that I meant to show you. I don't know if you remember, but I ended up showing them, and because of that, blah, blah, I ended up getting a job. So that was sort of the beautiful kind of like come around of that.
Yeah.
So it was great. So I ended up spending 5 years at Def Jam.
Oh, that's a solid career.
No, I was there. I always make a joke because Jay-Z came in 96 and I left in 95. So.
You could have been a part of that story.
I was part of the Public Enemy, LL Cool J. I was part of that world. So yeah, no, it was an amazing experience, and I left there to go to MCA Records, where that's when I met with The Roots and Karma and Mary J. Blige.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really how it started.
Wow. Okay, so you get your start basically in music, and what I liked about what you said is that you kind of like jotted down like, what do I like? And then you decided to make a job out of that. And I like to think like that too. Like one of the a previous job that I had, the reason why I took the job on, I was like, what is my highest bill right now? And then I said, let me work for them so I can get a discount. And it just all ended up just working out very well for me in that sense. But it's like, I think when you think in a practical manner that way. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think like for me, like I said, I've gotten fired so many times.
Yeah.
Sort of like, why am I just going to keep going around this circle? It's like, I have to do something different. I have to make something different than what I'm currently doing. So yeah, it was just kind of looking for inspiration, basically.
And then, so at what point do you and your wife start the Gravillis Studios?
So around 2000, so it was like July 2000, we had just had, in 99, we just had our first child, Bianca. And basically, we were like, I remember the time I was at MCA Records, and I think I got, like, the music industry wasn't doing great.
Yeah.
And they were cutting salaries, they're doing all these things. And it was the year that she was being born. And I think they were like salary cuts. And I kind of wanted to leave, but then it was like, well, I don't want to leave right now. We're about to have this baby, but I'm going to give myself a year to sort of figure it out. So I did. And yeah, we ended up leaving in 2000, left really well. It was like, that's like a good piece of advice. Always try to leave a place great, and I did. And because of that, we ended up working a lot with MCA Records right off the bat.
Okay, great. So you could, at that point, you were commissioned or like a freelance.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly, like a freelance. So we technically started the company in 2000, and it just kind of started from there. But we started just doing music. That was where we started off. Like that's what we knew, music. So we did music for, I'd say, for the first 4 years of the company. That's all we did was music. So it was great. It was like we were working on Santana, Babyface, and Usher, and just like all these different artists. And yeah, all types of artists. It was awesome. And again, that's how we built a relationship with The Roots and Common. We were doing all their albums. And yeah, it was awesome. Like we had a great time. And then all of a sudden, the music industry started taking a downturn around 2000.
Had to pivot.
Yeah, I had to pivot. And that pivot is interesting because we stayed true in a way to like how I began with like the passion thing.
Yeah.
When am I gonna pivot? And I was like, well, I love movies. And we were naive. We thought that, just because we did all this cool music stuff, we were gonna be like just embraced by the movie,
But it's a different industry.
It's completely different industry of different executives, different everything. The money's different. It's like the focus is different. Like, when I'm doing a music job, I remember so many times, like with Common, for instance, he would just like come pick me up and we would go driving. He'd play the record and like he'd be rapping in the car. Like we was having all these conversations, and that's, we'd talk about covers and stuff like that. It was just me and the artist. Yeah, wow. Where on movies, it's like a whole machine. It's a whole different world, So it was tough. Like it was tough to break into, quite frankly. And it was one of those things where for a minute there, we weren't really sure where if there was a place for us,
Yeah, yeah,
very like, again, it's, it's a very small industry. Like
yeah,
a lot of people don't even know, like, oh, there is even an industry of
yeah.
people that are making like posters and trailers. Like, you don't really think about it. You look at it like, okay, this comes out, you see it.
I take in the visuals. I never think
Yeah.
about, the person behind.
Yeah, you don't really think about,
Yeah,
oh, this is the world. This is an actual industry.
yeah.
Um, and ironically, our very first poster was a documentary called Fade to Black, which is Jay-Z's Black.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of made sense, of course. That was a music doc and that was our first thing. So yes, that's kind of where it started. And thankfully for us, we ended up, I know it's like saying Voldemort right now, but the Weinstein Company,
Oh God.
the Weinstein Company, they gave us our first opportunity.
Like major look.
Yeah, they gave us our first opportunities. They really did. And like,
because at this point you have relocated then from NYC to LA, right?
Yeah, so I had done that while I was in music still, because I was when I worked for MCA Records, like the main company was out here. Sure. And I just got married at the time, and sort of we made the transition to just see what it was like. And by the time we had our first kid, it was like, oh, we're gonna just stay. I was like, I'm not trying to do the baby stroller on the subway. So I was like, we're just gonna
the sort of Park Slope thing, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So, but anyway, so then movies, like, because of the Weinsteins, we started doing all this independent film.
Yeah.
Which was great. And to be honest, what was really great about it was that it wasn't Black specific.
I was noticing that about your work. Everything is so varied.
It's one thing that we were really like, and we haven't had to check this in music, is that we want to make sure that we were able to do everything.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, if I'm, for instance, if I'm a white-owned agency, I never have to really explain myself to work on Black projects.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? they just come normal. So, but we kind of knew, like, it was very easy, especially in Hollywood, to get pigeonholed for just doing Black projects. So that's why the Weinstein was like an extra blessing, because they had all these indie projects that had no Black people in it. So it was kind of great in a way. So it was just our work we were getting known for, and like the type of work that we did. So that was sort of super important, and that like helped us. I remember, I'll never forget, 2009 was like the year I remember we felt really confident about taking a Black project and not being pigeonholed. I mean, that year we designed Inglourious Bastards, and Alvin and the Chipmunks, and Avatar.
Wow.
So
I mean,
like,
at this point, I mean, because of your reputation, and I'm just again noticing that you cannot do this without maintaining great relationships. Even when you said that you had left the job, you did not leave on any kind of terrible terms. You weren't kicking it. Yeah. So
super important.
So at this point, with what you built with the agency, I mean, the projects kind of, I would think they just come to you. It's a nice place to be.
Yeah, I feel like I think now we're a different place now than we were back then, when we were starting and trying to hustle to get projects. And it's one of those things. And again, the industry, like I said, is really small. Thankfully, we've gotten to a place in the industry where, at least in our industry, we're pretty known. We have really good relationships. Like we have a relationship with Spike Lee. So we started working with him in 2015, and he's been a supporter ever since.
That's great.
So that's really great. We have a really great relationship recently with Michael B. Jordan. Worked on Creed with him. So it's like, and like I said, we've worked on recently. So we did the branding for the Oscars this year.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, so we did the branding for the Oscars this year, and I took my daughter to the show. Yeah. And at the Governor's Ball, I ended up meeting Steven Spielberg, and I'd worked on 4 of his projects. So he didn't know. So so I was able to talk to him and tell him about, hey, actually we worked on West Side Story and The Post and Ready Player One. He was like, wait, what?
Like, why don't I know you?
So he literally said that. He said, why don't I know who you are?
Yeah.
And in my brain, it's funny, in my brain, at first I had to like try to you know, bring my spirit back into my body when he was talking to me.
Because it's like there's just some people like,
you know, something
yeah,
like, you know, Spielberg, you know what I'm saying?
right.
So,
I'm
like,
pretty good like with I don't get nervous or sort of like, you know, elevate people necessarily in a way that I feel like they're like, godlike or anything like that. But when it's a Steven Spielberg, it's gonna be a little hard to just sit with that and act like,
So my daughter caught him on film saying that to me. Like,
oh,
he
that's
was
cool.
like, oh no, I don't know you. You know what I mean? And I was just like, and I was very cool at the time. I was very like, oh, of course, no, blah, blah, blah. But in my brain afterwards, I was like, we're never in these spaces.
I was thinking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I know that's why, because we're never at these meetings, we're never in these spaces.
Yeah.
Like people don't know who we are necessarily.
Right.
You know?
So yeah, when you're in, you can be. So it is like sort of because I was saying the same thing. Like I was always saying like, oh, I don't want to go and do red carpet because I don't want to ask somebody who did their outfit. I don't want a 60-second conversation. Like there's just things to me that is not important.
Yeah.
And then I did some red carpet recently, and I was actually, because of the kind of questions I was asking, it wasn't the 60-second. They were like having to like tap me like, okay, you know, it's time for Kiefer Sutherland. Let me go now. You know, so you have to find, you know, you're right. People are like, and I get people tell me that all the time at that time, you know, because I'm kind of like, you know, I could be in the house all day, right? But
yeah, me too.
Yeah. My house is
creative. I'm just like,
right, exactly. I just hear editing, I'm doing my thing. But one of the things that has been said to me repeatedly is like, you have to go outside. People have to see you. Yeah.
You have to see it. You know, we had a director, even Spike actually. When Spike came to our studio, he came in and he literally said, he's like, he looked around, he's like, where have you guys been at?
Yeah.
You know, like he's like, where you been at? And it's kind of like, well, we've sort of just been here grinding, you know, it's like heads down, you know. But the reality is, with someone like Spike is always looking to push more people of color in this industry because he knows there's such a disparity. You know,
he really does. He does.
Yeah, no, he really 100% he does it. And he would actually give me that charge as well in regards to what we do. He'd be like, Kenny, you know, you're like one of the few minority-owned agencies that do this. Like, you need to be like out there. You need to be talking. You need to be bringing more attention. Yeah. So, you know, I've definitely tried lately to just listen to that a little bit more, especially as I get older.
Especially with the with your resume. I mean, it's like, you know, you kind of have the right to kind of flex with that a little bit.
we have a little bit of flex. You know, honestly, recently something happened that was pretty awesome, and that was, so as you know, like I said, there's a huge disparity in our industry in regards to, you know, agencies of color being owned that do what we do. So, of course, when 2020 happened.
Oh my God, I was going to bring that up. I was going to bring this up. I wonder if you're going to say what I'm thinking. Go ahead.
Okay, so there was a lot of attention on us.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot of attention and a lot of people asking a lot of questions. And, you know, one of the things that we talked about was the need for just awareness of what we do.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, especially in marginalized areas, in, you know, like, people don't know that there's even an option of what we do. You know, I remember one time we worked on this documentary series called The Defiant Ones, and it was with Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine for HBO. And I remember showing Dr. Dre, we were on set, I showed him these sketches, and I was like, oh, Dre, we're going to shoot you like this, we're going to shoot you like that. And then he was like, okay, yeah, bet, you know, I'll do it. And then in my brain, I was like, you know what? I bet you that a kid right now, in their minds, the only way they get in front of Dr. Dre is if they can rap. Or if they can make beats.
Right, it's true.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the options. You know, or they're like a celebrity, like sports person.
Sure.
And he's gonna show up to their game or whatever. Like, that's pretty much it. That's the options. You know what I'm saying?
I've actually very specifically heard that Dr. Dre is very inaccessible. Like, there's people that I know that have worked for him in different capacities that you're saying, where like they don't even get his phone number. And it's like, he's got to pass the phone to 3 different people before he can vet out that you're not some crazy person in actually.
I know, exactly. I'm here like by myself, sitting with him, going over this stuff. Like, hey, I need to do this, I need to do that. And it just made me think like, wow, you know, we're not aware of this, you know, not really aware. So I think for me, that became like, well, I'm going to try to take advantage of this time where
Yeah.
everyone's trying to hit us up about what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, one of our competitors came to me, and she's this great woman, and she's a partner again at one of our competitive agencies. And she asked me, she's like, Kenny, what do you think? And I said, well, I said, first of all, there's the education part of this.
Yeah.
Like we can't afford art schools.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not even an option. And there's also the, like, even if you go to art school, what job do you get?
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm.
So basically what we did, we came up with this idea, we came up with a program that we pitched to Otis Art School, which is it's just an art school here in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And basically we pitched them doing this 20-month program. Basically what the program did was it taught what we did. So
cool.
Like everything from designing movie posters, but like all the details, like copywriting, like photography, like the sketch work that has to be done for a photo shoot. But also there was a track for like trailers and like making trailers, editing trailers, and the whole purpose of it is to get jobs at the end.
Yeah.
Into our industry, into the agencies.
Sure.
So, but we needed someone to fund it. So we came up with this idea. So we went to Netflix. We chose Netflix because Netflix, when 2020 happened, Netflix had this big thing where they went around to all the agencies and basically demanded to see how many people of color they had working there.
Huh.
So we're like, okay, well, we really know what that answer is going to be. So if you're really that interested, maybe you'd be interested in this. So basically, it took about 2 years, but last year, surprisingly, Netflix came back to us and said, you know what, we're going to fund it.
Really? Okay, that's great.
Basically, so in September of this year, it is going to be funded. So it's basically 18 Black and brown kids that are going to go into this program. We're in the middle of recruiting right now. Like the recruitment ends at the end of April. And they're going to have this education, and it's going to be supported by our industry.
Yeah.
And Netflix are paying for it, so they're not going to pay for anything.
That's
and basically,
great.
Yeah, like 16 months into the program, they're all going to be put into different agencies for internships, which they'll be ready for. And hopefully the idea is that they would have jobs at the end of it, and we could start keep it going.
Well, what I like about it too is that you're also talking about, like, even talked about competitor agency relationships. So it's like, we're all in the same game kind of thing, but it doesn't mean that we can't be friends. Yeah,
exactly. And that was, people really responded to that because, this was like this white Jewish woman, a huge agency, and there's myself, and we compete a lot. It isn't like, once in a while, like we can, we're competing on many of the same things. We just push that aside. Yeah. We're like, no, let's come together and figure this out. That's she's been amazing. And it's been a beautiful thing. So it's a real thing. And I think when this happened, and the fact that it's happened, it almost, for me, gave us just reasoning for why our company's even successful in the first place. To be able to actually sort of champion a program like this, actually help make this happen. So it felt really super rewarding. And it feels like we're actually making actual steps to change what the industry looks like 10 years from now,
Yeah. So, no, the thing I was going to bring up is because you brought up that, 2020 and the pandemic and things were just, kind of really, really crazy. One of the things I was noticing, like, especially within the film industry, that there were a lot of like programs that were being pitched in terms of like diversity. So everybody could kind of like try to help out in some kind of way. But then I started to see like some of that money, like some people made really good money during the pandemic for reasons like that. Then I started to see that those kinds of things actually kind of started to fade. So I'm glad you found a home with Netflix where it's like,
I literally, we had an info session and I literally brought up that same point. I said, here we are, it's 2023. And I was like, Netflix have stepped up to make this program happen, and there's no protest on the street. You know what I mean? Like, it's like they're committed to making this change. So, that is pretty amazing because we all knew that it was just a matter of time that it was going to fade. I remember our whole industry, 2020, July, had this huge meeting about just the whole industry, like 300 people on the Zoom.
Interesting.
And the same meeting, a year later, there was 60 people on the Zoom.
Oh, you see what I'm saying? Like, it just...
That's just real. And that's just real. It's like, hey, I get that you were jazzed up and you were, you felt you needed to make a difference, but it's very different to like when it's just a consistent thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just it's a different thing. It's like a year later, do I really expect you to still be as hyped and jazzed if
That's just people. Yeah, that's like a
you're not experiencing this. Do you know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Like,
yeah.
really expect that. I think it's probably a lot too expected, to be honest. You know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's quite interesting. And then again, like, you know, you work with some of the same people consistently. Like you said, you work with Spike Lee a lot. And I mean,
Yeah.
what I like about your placement in the industry, let's say, is that you do have this. You get to sort of like you get to go to Ralph's and go to the grocery store, and people aren't like banging down your door, like, unless they just happen to know you, right? They know you in your industry. But I think what an interesting kind of place that is to be so immersed in the Hollywood world, and you have these kind of relationships with these uber famous people, right? And you don't have to be like harassed. Like, I think that's a cool place to be. Like, if I could have it my way, that's what I would like as well too. Like
Right.
that's
Yeah,
a real, yeah.
no, absolutely. I think it's I think we're super fortunate like that because I think it's true. Like I've wondered about that for like just people that I've met and have relationships with. And it's part of the business for them. You
Yeah.
know, it's literally it's part of the business. But yeah, for us, it's kind of a nice,
Yeah.
people don't know who we are, and we love it this way, by the
Of
way.
course, you get to reap the same rewards. Yeah, but
Exactly. Like, we're enjoying the same sort of, in a way, even though we don't have fame and the money part of it is not the same, but we're enjoying the process of
yeah,
the,
yeah.
of the work. You know what I'm saying? As an artist, that ends up being like hugely important, and it's like I said, it's a lot of fun. Like we've got to work on like amazing projects. And it just doesn't get old either.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
what I mean by that is I remember back in the day, Tower Records, I'd see a cover that I'd worked on, like in the Tower Records thing, and just looking at it, it doesn't get old. I remember I designed Notorious B.I.G.'s Ready to Die album cover.
Did you?
I did. And I remember my 14-year-old son came to me one day. He said, Dad, you designed Biggie's cover. I said, I did. He's like, that's kind of
That's
dope.
a big deal. Yeah. You're even like, you even get to be when your kids think you're cool. Like that's
exactly right. No, 100%. And that was like 14, like 18 years before he was born, And it's
yeah.
like he's like bringing that up. I was like, that's kind of dope,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
so yeah, so super fortunate. We worked on that this movie just came out called Air.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
the directed. And we did this billboard. It's on a building, and on Sunset. And someone sent me a photo of it recently. And again, same thing. Doesn't get old.
Yeah. It's like,
But yeah,
wow. Yeah.
It's super rewarding. It's super rewarding work. And to be honest, we need more voices of diversity in the work.
Yeah.
That's the other thing too. Like we really do, So it's so that's why we're super excited about the program. It's called Access, by the way. Which
It's called
love.
Access. Oh, that's
Yeah,
great. Access.
Exactly. We
Okay.
love that because that's exactly what we're doing. And as far as we're concerned, we're giving access to an industry that people don't really know much about and didn't know really existed.
Well, I'm always excited to talk to people that are behind the scenes or work in the creative field in a different kind of way. Like, I know it's cool to talk to the A-lister person that's like, on the billboard itself. But sometimes you gotta know like what's happening. Like, to your point, if we don't even understand how to be, to work in a creative capacity where we're like in art and things like that, we have to talk to people. So I will talk to like, writers, showrunners, directors, just people that are not necessarily on, in the front lines, that you don't necessarily see every day. And I think that because like an interview like this absolutely would inspire a kid. Like, I didn't know I could do that.
Didn't know. Yeah, didn't know it was an option. Didn't know. And again, like, you get to meet your heroes. I remember we worked on this movie called Henrietta Lacks for HBO. And we were shooting Oprah, And I just remember sort of like, we were shooting her. I was standing back, kind of like Oprah. And then I remember her assistant or costume, someone was like, come forward. So I actually sort of went forward and we were looking at photos and I was like, and she asked me what I thought and I said something and she like mimicked my accent. And I just went to like pass out, basically. Yeah, I literally, as soon as I got away, I was like, Oprah mimicked me. She mimicked my accent.
I don't even care what she said, but she said it to me.
Just mimicking me. So yeah, like you get a chance to just like meet your heroes too. And like I
Yeah,
said, the Spielberg thing was like on the Oscars was
that's
amazing. So
awesome.
it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a great business to be in, and we're just not in it enough. There's just not enough of us
Hmm.
represented in it, and hopefully that will change in the future, and hopefully we can play a little bit of a part of it. And that's sort of why we sort of want to do more sort of interviews like this, because we do want to start exposing
Yeah.
what we do, even though like you, I'm very much homebody. I'm very much like I'd rather just be kind of
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
working, but I also there's a sense of responsibility too,
Yeah.
and I try to tell this is like I think when you're a minority specifically in the industry where you're like almost the only one pretty much, you kind of
Yeah.
have two places to go. You either sort of just sit in that success, especially if you are successful,
Sure.
or you look around and say it's really not good enough. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
good enough that it's just us here, so everyone at Gravillis knows we fall on that side of the fence, so
Hmm.
we're trying to make a difference there.
No, that's great. There's definitely a huge. I think that as minorities, there's a huge responsibility for us to pay it forward in that sense. You just no man is an island, and you don't just like. And I just there are people that have that kind of mentality where they kind of feel like maybe their place in the world would be threatened if they
Right.
introduce people to what they have going on.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
totally.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I know. When you get to my age, I think you have to look at the future. I have two, my kids. I have a 23-year-old,
Hmm.
is our logo, and I have a 20-year-old son who's a director who lives in New York. These are the future. So
Yeah.
it's impossible. I have to.
That's really quite awesome. So they ended up doing working in creative industry as well.
Yeah, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they did. They don't work for us technically, but yeah, they're in
Yeah,
definitely.
that's really cool. So they can actually like call upon you for advice in terms of how.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I speak to them a lot,
Mhm.
especially like I said, my daughter works for a streamer, so I
Yeah.
speak a lot about stuff. And my son, like I said, he's a director, so we have a lot of conversations back and forth. He's directing music videos and stuff like that in New York.
That's
So
so
yeah.
cool. How is he finding New York? Is he having a better
Loves,
time
he,
than?
lo- he loves New York. He didn't like it when he was a kid, but now at 20 years old, he dropped out of film school. And it's
Mhm.
funny, when he dropped out of film school, I was like, oh, now you're on your way now.
Yeah.
And now I know you're going to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and yeah, like he just directed this really cool video that's getting a lot of love. So it's like, yeah, he loves it. I
That's
mean,
awesome. Well, one thing I like about the program too. I don't. It's 20 months. You said yes.
yeah, it's 20 months, and
I
it's
think yeah.
all at the campus at Otis.
See, to me, like that's kind of like I understand that with school. I mean, maybe school is in some cases less about the actual education. Sometimes it's about the socialization and kind of getting to know people and networking to some extent. But I do think that we're better served by having programs that just kind of really stick to the point. And
Oh,
20 months is a nice, it's a good fair amount of time to really gather all the information that you need. Whereas a lot of these 4-year programs, it's like you're taking all of these like prerequisites and general studies when it's like, let me just get to the meat and potatoes of the thing.
absolutely. So the reason why my son dropped out of film school is because he was PAing. He went to film school in Toronto, and he kept on getting jobs as a PAing on all these Drake music videos and all
Yeah.
these other. He's like, I'm just learning more.
Yeah.
I'm learning more being
Actually in it. Yeah.
doing it exactly.
Mhm.
I think what's different about our program is that our program is being run by people that do this.
Yeah,
And
that's good.
we're like, we're gonna be supporting the kids, and they're gonna when they leave this program, it will be different from a regular art school of 4 years, because they're gonna be so like indoctrinated in our industry, because the program's set up just to do that.
Yeah.
It's that specific. It's like, if you don't love movies, I had this in an info session the other day. I was like, if you don't really love movies, you probably shouldn't, like actually like apply for this program.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because like, this is what we do. We market films, we market TV shows. It's like, and that's where the guidance is going to be, and that's what you're going to be learning. So it's like, it's so specific, which I love.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I think, and most importantly, it's going to give kids confidence to go into these places. Because one of the other parts, we have like a mentorship program in the program,
Sure.
which is basically to help navigate to these kids to understand there's a good chance when you do leave here and you go on this internship, you're probably going to be one of two or one of one Black brown kid in this whole company.
Mhm.
So we got to give you tools to navigate that too. so you don't become overwhelmed, but you actually still succeed.
Oh, that's important to know.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's super important. Yeah.
and a lot of, I know we say this often a lot of times too, when you're speaking to children or people that are trying to make their way, a lot of times as Black people, we have to show up 10 times as good as everybody else in order to really.
That's just the reality.
That's
Like that is the reality. And it's like, and what was great about Otis is that they understood that. They understood that this program was specifically geared towards like minorities that again don't have the same opportunities, don't connect to the same people. Like, so that's gonna also be part of the education, is like, how do I navigate in this world? How do I still keep my voice?
Yeah.
We had this, I always bring up this one poster. We worked on this documentary called I'm Not Your Negro, which is a James Baldwin documentary. And I'll never forget it. Part of the info session, someone asked me, like, do you feel like a benefit of being Black in the industry? Like, do you feel like you have a voice? I said, well, sometimes, but one particular time, we were asked about I'm Not Your Negro from the studio, and they were very sensitive. They were like, listen, this title, we don't really know how to deal with it. And, we just want your sort of point of view. And a studio never had approached us like that before, which we thought was amazing. And our big thing was like, Baldwin is bold, and so we were like, it has to be bold. And we literally made the title like 90% of the poster, and this across Baldwin's eyes. And the studio could have been freaked out by that, but they were like, no, we're going to show it to Raoul Peck and see what he says. And he loved it. And that poster became the poster. And, it felt like we actually had a voice in that. Like it wasn't about, oh, we're going to make it really small and like not really, we don't want to make people uncomfortable. We're going to make it very tiny. And instead it was like, no, it's Baldwin.
No, that's Baldwin. Yeah, like show up like Baldwin.
We're going to show up like Baldwin. And we did. And that's why, so when you come into our studio, there's like 3 sort of light boxes of posters on the wall. And right now, like Nanny's on there, which we worked on Creed, loads of more recent projects. One poster that does not move is I'm Not Your Negro. And it stays there. So when you come into our studio, you know exactly where you are.
Yeah. That's really great.
So like, that experience in itself made me feel like there's a reason why we need a voice in this industry.
Yeah. A lot of decisions are made without us there at all. And then they totally, then you have all this taking ideas, and then Black Twitter shows up and gets involved, and everybody's unhappy. So it's good to have a voice in the room for sure.
For sure. Yeah.
Kenny, I thank you so much for your time, because this is very it was just such an interesting experience to hear what you have to say here, because I'm not familiar with how you work in the industry in the same way that, it's just not something that I ever thought about in that way. Like somebody's got to make the billboard poster. Somebody's got to do it, right? When I go to the movie and I see that poster, we see these cutouts and things like that. It's like you just never realize. I always kind of assumed it was like an in-house thing, and
everyone does. They just thought, they have people that do that in the studio, and that's it. So there's probably about 15 companies that do everything, like 95% of the work.
Okay. See, I didn't think about that. I mean, I think it's really beautiful to see somebody be able to sustain in a world where they were able to create their own agency too.
Yeah. No, definitely. 23 years in July, so we feel fortunate about that for sure.
Wow! So you were able to make your day job your job. No. Some of us, the dream is to. I think I could. I like the entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, not everybody is meant to of course run an agency or run a company and all this, and you have all this nonsense on the internet where people are like, telling everybody like get an LLC and this and that. I'm like, come on, it doesn't start there. It starts with find something that you can, I don't know. Anyways, I take in a lot of media, content, good or bad. I need to know what's going on. So, but I do want to repeat that you have this program at Otis.
Yes, Otis Art School, Netflix. So it's basically Netflix, not just funding it, but they're partners in the program, and they will be supporting the program. And it's going to be 18 cohorts to start. and applications are still happening. And you can go to otis.com, I believe, and you can see the application there. The program's called Access.
That's great. And is there an age range?
You just have to be at least 18 by the start of the calendar year, September 2023.
Okay, and then I see. Okay, by September. Okay,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
18 is the minimum.
18 is the minimum, and then the class size.
Oh, it's 18. Actually, 18.
Oh, so 18 and 18. Okay, 18 and up. Okay, that's what I wasn't clear.
Yeah.
Okay, great. No, that's good to know. I mean, I'm sure people are going to be very, very excited to apply for this because it just sounds cool. This has never been anything. I mean, I can draw and like, I do all this design stuff to some extent, but had I seen something like this, at an earlier, this would have been a great career path to take on, no matter where that would have went. Aside from, like you said, the bank jobs, where I've worked some really random jobs that were just jobs, It would have been nice to know there's a place in something like this. I would have been.
That's the goal, like because the reality is like once these kids get into this world, they're gonna be telling their friends will be telling their parents.
Exactly.
Right? Like that's not what we want. We want all of a sudden it to be like, no, this is a world that we could be in. It's just kind of like, hopefully, we'll be finding the next Virgils, that change the game. You know what I'm saying? Because we have something to say. So we're hoping that we can help like open the portal and have more people know about this and come in and so yeah, and I believe it. I believe in it wholeheartedly that will happen.
This is going to be great. I'll go ahead and spread the message as well. So I'm just so glad we got this conversation. I know it was kind of weird timing for you in terms of like trying to get everything scheduled. No. It was nice to interview somebody while it's getting dark here in New York City. So sometimes I got to get like, speaking of Netflix, there's been times like I interviewed Cynthia Erivo, and I think that interview was like at 7 a.m. my time. Like,
wow, that's different. So what's really interesting about Cynthia Erivo, and then again, this goes back to just the industry. I met her. We worked on Widows.
Okay.
Was in Widows, and I met her, and obviously we're both English, so we connected talking. And then I met her again on Harriet.
Okay.
And then she told me, and she was like, "Wait, do you do this for every movie?"
That's like again, that's cool.
I just happened to be on two of yours. Like, again, like people don't know, it's like
that's so absolutely cool. And it's also nice to be remembered and respected as well. And I just want to repeat for people that are listening that you have to maintain good, strong relationships. Don't just walk in. You don't want to be. And and also I think that a lot of times people like they don't realize that being a leader doesn't mean that you have to be a nasty person either. There's a lot of people that think that leading requires like a certain kind of like an arrogance or something like that, when you could be giving back and just be kind, and that has obviously reflected very well as far as the things that you've been able to do. And I think that's so cool that you're able to, of course, it all starts in East London as a Caribbean kid, right? But I mean, respect. But to be able to find a life in NYC and in LA, I mean these are things that people cannot say, especially when you came from across the pond. So that's really cool, to hear that you've got a really good story in that too. So I mean, I thank you so much, Kenny, for talking to me.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it.
Kenny, the owner of Gravillis Inc. Right? Gravillis Inc. Keep it simple, right? We didn't want to do anything too. I mean, just having your name behind something like that is, that's definitely an accomplishment. And it's just a really cool journey that you've had, that you kind of started off with an idea like, well, I think I want to do this. No more carefree. And
it's better than being a pool shark. That's for sure.
Yeah. I know, exactly. And it's so random that pool, like to tell that story, that pool brought you. That's the most hilarious thing in the world. But, I think that it's, even though I have different goals for myself in a different way, these are the kinds of conversations that do inspire me to do better, right? Because it's like, get out there, do something, do it. Don't be afraid. Don't, be loud, if you need to. When you said you just not, peek through the door, It's stuff, what do they say? Closed mouths don't get fed. you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. And one thing I've noticed too is a lot of times, even speaking on that, is a lot of people make assumptions about what you may or may not want to do. So if you don't say it, they'll be like,
Yeah.
well, I didn't know you were looking for this
Yeah,
job. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, you gotta
So
speak.
yeah, these are important things to bring up. But no, for sure. Thank you so much for your time, Kenny. And it was an honor to speak to you. And I'm so happy for these kids. I think they're going to have a great, great, great time. And you're definitely changing lives with this concept. That's such a good idea.
Awesome. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And also, beautiful that you have this picturesque family. And he got a boy and a girl. Who gets to?
I know.
That's really wonderful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, awesome. Thank you.
If you want to see more content like this on blackfilm.com, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that bell.